That's really going to tell the tale as to just how intense this gets and how much flooding we see. Again, high tide. Woo! Oh, I've been waiting for that all morning. All morning. Good times. But yeah, you can see some pretty intense action out here. We're live in Camp Ellis, a very soaked Beth Jones, News 13. Back to you. Tonight, hours and hours after these early morning fires broke out, you can actually still smell smoke in the air. I'm here with my esteemed partner, Justin, of Black Belt Ballroom in South Portland. So let's kick it off. Just starting off with the basic step here. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. So it's a 3-part step. That's a crossbody and a single turn. Folks here stress the importance of Maine lobster men and women staying unified in their fight against the proposed cuts to the industry, and they also said it's important that they now take this fight beyond the state of Maine. The somber song of bagpipes and drums filled the Cross Insurance Center Thursday as family, fellow officers, and community members gathered to bid farewell and mark the end of watch for fallen Hancock County Sheriff's Deputy Luke Gross.
A son, cousin, husband, father, dedicated co-worker, simple funny man, spontaneous daredevil, committed servant, and a loyal friend.
They recalled all the ways Deputy Gross touched people's lives, especially his passion for working with kids through the DARE program and at Camp Postcard.
Luke was a great DARE officer and loved working with kids. He was a big kid himself. He could be seen in the classroom teaching lessons or on the floor coloring with the kindergarten. They loved him in school, and he loved being there.
Colleagues also lauded his compassion for victims and his desire to help people. Gross's wife Lauren says that legacy continues to grow.
I have received countless messages that start, "You don't know me, but I know Luke," from Camp Postcard, DARE, work, the school. And the truth of it is, I do know all of you. Maybe not by name, but by experience. Luke remembered and was impacted by each and every one of you, and it was never just another call for him.
She stood with their children, Ryan and Alyssa, and they all recalled the love they shared as a family.
As many of you have heard me say before, Luke was my oldest child that required the most adult supervision. Life was always an adventure with him, and I'm not ready for that adventure to end.
You were always there for me when I needed you the most. I know you'll follow me everywhere.
I hope one day I will be able to follow in his footsteps and be like him. I miss you, Dad, and I love you.
Lauren closed with a simple message.
Life is short. Slow down. Spend time with those that matter. And go play that game of Uno.
Deputy Luke Gross, rest in peace. We have the watch from here.
In Bangor, Beth Jones, ABC 7 and Fox 22.
It's pretty scary. Yeah. It's pretty scary stuff.
Brewer City Council member Jen Morin is talking about the scene currently unfolding on the other side of the country in Oregon. It's been 2.5 years since the state passed Measure 110, which decriminalized user amounts of hard drugs and sought to redirect tax dollars to pay for recovery services.
So Measure 110 has just been a disaster.
A slew of Oregon stakeholders recently told Brewer officials via Zoom that the law plunged Portland and other parts of the state into an abyss of homelessness, crime increases, and unchecked addiction.
There are tents in my neighborhood on the sidewalks. Homelessness is skyrocketed. Google Portland and the people living under the bridge. I mean, people are tunneling under our infrastructure to create strange housing situations, and it's all drug fueled.
Leaders in Brewer say they're worried those scenes could play out here too if certain bills are passed into law. There is a bill in the works to decriminalize the possession of user amounts of hard drugs here in Maine. The language has not yet been finalized. Both LD 1159 and LD 1364 seek to establish safe sites for users to consume drugs procured elsewhere under supervision. Both of those bills also provide immunity from arrest for users and facility staff. Brewer Public Safety Director Jason Moffett argues decriminalization and facilities like the ones proposed will trigger a downward spiral in the community.
You know, they were using in public parks, out in the open, things like that. Needles everywhere. We know that violent crime went up, property crimes went up, child endangerment cases went up, overdoses went up, both fatal and non-fatal. So, I mean, essentially, it's a bad deal all the way around, and we don't want to see that happen here.
At no point do I foresee Brewer authorizing that sort of a facility here.
They also argue that drug use will not be confined to the consumption sites and will spill over into surrounding areas, drug dealing and other often related crimes too, creating a public safety nightmare for residents, a public safety nightmare they won't be enabled to police.
It ignores what the cost to the rest of us is. It ignores the fact that people might not feel safe in their homes or walking down their streets or enjoying public safety. It means that for a vast majority of the population, the message is, just suck it up. And it can't be that.
The city of Brewer has gone so far as to pass a resolution openly stating its opposition to decriminalization and harm reduction or safe consumption sites, saying in part, quote, "The Brewer City Council opposes efforts to decriminalize the possession of illicit drugs, measures that would impede law enforcement's ability to interdict crimes, and measures that embolden criminal behavior," end quote. Instead, leaders are pushing for what they call a multi-prong approach, treatment and drug enforcement, saving lives and getting drugs off the streets.
We have to have balance to this. We have to have treatment, we have to have recovery sources, we have to have education, and as much as the proponents for decriminalization won't like to hear this, you need to have law enforcement in the criminal justice system.
It is important to note that we have previously reported specifically on LD 1159 and LD 1364, including why proponents of those bills feel they are viable solutions. We have those links in this story on our website, foxbangor.com. We will also be speaking next week with the author of the decriminalization bill currently being drafted about the reasoning behind it. We will bring you that conversation as well. In studio, Beth Jones, ABC 7 and Fox 22 News.
My own cousin died in 2021 of a fatal overdose. That one death is unacceptable to me.
Like many Mainers, the horrors of drug addiction have also personally impacted lawmakers. Representative Lydia Craft's own connection to the issue, along with her work as a licensed clinical social worker, have driven her to draft what she calls a public health response to substance use disorder. She says the state is woefully ill-equipped to deal with the rising need for treatment and recovery services.
So we have 16 counties in our state, and very few of those are currently served by detox and SUD treatment services. And this bill would establish a comprehensive system of 24-hour care, receiving centers, to when folks are ready and asking for treatment, their first step in recovery is getting face-to-face contact in a receiving center, and that's what this public health bill will do.
The bill's language is still being finalized, but what it also does is decriminalize possession of user amounts of illicit drugs, a controversial approach that takes law enforcement out of the equation.
It's certainly well documented that drug addiction leads to crime and can trigger crime, and that other community members can be harmed by crimes related to the drug addiction of others. Do you feel like there's any room for law enforcement, or are you really taking an approach of law enforcement needs to not be part of this conversation anymore?
It's really important that folks who are struggling with a disease have the interventions that are proven and research-based, which we know substance use treatment is. This bill does nothing to talk about any of the other criminal charges around trafficking and furnishing. This is looking at incarceration hasn't worked. We cannot arrest our way out of this epidemic, and in order to do this, we have to try something different.
Republican Senator Brad Farron is also grappling with loss due to addiction. One of the 716 Mainers lost last year to fatal drug overdoses was his beloved daughter, Haley.
Haley bug, that's what we call it. That's sea turtles. She loves sea turtles and loved to read, loved the Red Sox, just the ray of sunshine.
Farron says he and other Republicans are working on a multi-pronged approach to combating addiction. It, too, is still in the works, but he says it includes boosting education and increased services for treatment and recovery.
It's got to be the three-pronged approach. No one's got the smoking bullet. And that's where I talk about coming out of your comfort zone.
But it does not eliminate law enforcement or decriminalize user possession of drugs.
That's a bridge way too far, and decriminalizing it, I can't get to. I'd rather be able to visit Haley in jail than a gravesite.
Representative Laura Supica is co-sponsoring one of the bills that seeks to facilitate safe consumption sites where addicts could consume drugs under supervision.
I think it comes down to what harm reduction is. And you can't help a person recover, you can't help a person in addiction when they're dead. And so you really have to meet people where they're at.
However, Supica doesn't completely rule out the validity of law enforcement's role and recognizes that what may be a solution for some may not work for others.
For some people, when they are arrested and they enter into the court system, and they get into drug court, that system has worked well for them and they've been able to enter into recovery that way. But that is not true for a lot of other people, so we need different ways to address the issue.
What's clear is that there is crucial common ground: saving lives.
Right, we've got to keep people alive, and we have to help them when they are asking for it.
If we're going to make a difference, people have got to step outside their comfort zones, and we got to have discussions.
Reporting for ABC 7 and Fox 22 News, I'm Beth Jones.
As a country, we were ready to talk about it.
It would have been impossible not to. Matthew Shepard was just 21 years old when he was offered a ride home from a bar by Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson on October 6, 1998. They beat him with the butt of a gun, tied him to a fence on the outskirts of Laramie, Wyoming, and left him. A few days later, Matthew died in a Colorado hospital.
I think it spurred a national conversation about the state of LGBTQ rights in the country. I think when Matthew Shepard was murdered, marriage equality was very slowly passing state by state, and now it's the law of the land. So we see these huge cultural shifts over the 20 years since he's passed.
UVM senior Seth Wade was just 4 years old growing up in rural Illinois when Shepard was murdered, but came to know Matthew's story later when Wade realized he was also gay. He says Shepard's fate was a scar on his own psyche.
That, paired with the area I grew up, really made it so that I was very cautious. To this day, I have a hard time just making eye contact with guys because I'm afraid I kind of get put back into that area of where, oh no, they might think I'm gay, and then the silent voices, oh, that what happened to Matthew Shepard.
Last year, Shepard's ashes were interred at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C., where the ashes of notable figures like Helen Keller and Woodrow Wilson also rest. And as the anniversary of Matthew's death looms, so too does the change that his murder brought about, and the work still left to be done.
We're, talking about the national impact that Matthew Shepard had on the conversation about LGBTQ rights as the highest court of the land is debating whether or not it's still whether or not it should be legal for employers to be able to fire folks for being LGBTQ.
I still wish I didn't have that stress and fear that was encoded in me, and I really look forward to it for even more generations not having that. I really hope that continues.
For MyChamplainValley.com, I'm Beth Jones. It's a real-life James and the Giant Peach, except this cabbage wasn't grown by magic.
You had to check on it, water it, make sure it gets plenty of sunshine, and just make sure that it's doing well.
Third grader Nolan Anand was given a small cabbage plant, no bigger than a Brussels sprout, as part of a class competition to see who could grow the biggest. The project was part of a scholarship program from produce company Bonnie Plants called Kids Grow Green, Cashing in Cabbage. Nolan's colossal cabbage ultimately weighed in at 12 pounds, taking top prize.
I was super happy, super excited. It means that I have a really big green thumb.
And not just cabbage green, but a whole other kind. The win came with bragging rights and a $1,000 scholarship towards his college education.
It's great. We're really excited. We're gonna put it into his Vermont 529 and, you know, continue growing that as well.
Hopefully that
yes,
gets big as a cabbage.
exactly.
Meanwhile, what became of Nolan's prize-winning produce?
We made it into corned beef and cabbage.
That must have been a lot of corned beef and cabbage.
It was.
Was it good?
Yes.
We just never imagined that he would win, so it's just really neat, and you know, I think it's going to be just a lifetime memory for him.
It turns out Nolan has a twin brother, Mason, who wasn't in school the day his class received their cabbage plants, so he missed his chance. We're told that next fall they are considering a little friendly brotherly competition to see who can grow the biggest pumpkin. So stay tuned. For MyChamplainValley.com, I'm Beth Jones.